Hey, what did you talk about this week?
Welcome back to the Corporate Kitchen. I'm your host, Tiger. This week, we've been talking about haters, the people that will either give you some good criticism or just aggressive negative criticism. We're back. We're at the table now, and we got to give examples. And this was a little hard for me because I'm still relatively, I would say, like midway in my career, early midway. So I had to pull deep to try to identify some hater stuff. I mean, some stuff is just going to be common that we are all going to be like, wow, like, you know, I get that. And then other stuff, I was like, ooh, I had to pull deep. But I will say, it's a common sense one. I am excited to get my first hater for this podcast. I haven't hit like a lot of listeners. I'm hoping this podcast grows, it reaches further out, and I get a good number of listeners. Right now, it's kind of low, but at some point it's going to be big. And at some point, I will get my first hater. I will get someone who comments on, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, whatever, and it's like, oh, this show sucks. And I don't understand why people listen to this podcast because this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. And it's like, yes, 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 yes. I revel to having my first hater. And mind you, I wouldn't consider the podcast successful. I'm still in the midst of it. I have not achieved success. To me, I would achieve success in this podcast if I had like 1,000 listeners a month. Not averaging that right now, very much lower than that. So at this point, I feel as though I'm just making episodes. For the few people that are listening, great. At some point, I will put a little bit more work into marketing this and trying to get more of a reach and helpfully help more people in their transition from college to corporate America. But I wouldn't consider this a success. I would consider it in progress. Therefore, when I finally do get my first hater for this podcast, and your first action is celebrate and listen to your haters. Celebrate and listen to them. When you receive a hater, it is a signal that's like, oh, hello. Am I doing something right? It allows you to take a moment and self-reflect to understand, am I doing something right? If someone went on, like I said, Spotify, YouTube, and was like, your podcast sucks, it doesn't make sense, your analogies are trash. I'm like, well, that may be, but people are actually listening to it. So I can kind of ignore you. But also, thanks for listening. Unless it was a bot. Oh, well. But a lot of times when you're doing the analysis, it's like, if someone were to comment that they didn't like my cranberry sauce analogy at the kitchen because they thought that I could have used something else, you listen. So now, number one, I will have to thank you for listening, celebrate the fact that you listen to the podcast, and then I'll take a moment to actually listen to this hater and see if it's constructive or if it's a bad hater. If it's constructive, it may provide me an opportunity to make adjustments in this podcast to make it better, and they may contribute to making the podcast better. I could get someone to say, hey, I hate the intros of your podcast. Change it up. Cool. That may give me an opportunity. Not there yet, but I'm patiently waiting, excited waiting to really get haters so that I can really evaluate how I'm doing in this podcast. When you get haters, when you recognize that you have haters in corporate America, take the pause, celebrate and listen to your haters. They're going to provide you some information. I didn't say it's good information. I said they're going to provide you some information. And once you do that analysis, then you can determine whether or not it's good. The second action, and this will actually have a couple stories in it, is to be a hater. You yourself need to be a hater, and you need to recognize that you are being a hater. What does this mean? All right, one story I'm going to give you outside of the office place has to be common to a lot of people. I have a really good friend who's built like Michael J. White, the actor, martial artist. I mean, really, it's not even like, you can't even use the term buff. I mean, those ripped muscles. This person used to be a uh, what do you call those people that show their muscles type things? Used to be one of those people. And from that experience, slimmed down, but still super fit, super ripped, goes to the gym, solid gym rat. And my skinny self said, "Oh, I'm going to go to the gym with this person because not that I have aspirations to be that strong, that buff, but I wanted to add some muscle mass to myself because I was very relatively skinny at the time." And of course, I'm a hater for him because it's like, oh, this person got all the muscles in the world, got like ripped from doing all this gym stuff. Like, I can do that too. And then you get in the gym, you're like, I cannot do that. I cannot do any of this. It was funny because we actually went to the gym every day after work for a solid couple of months. And this person has a regiment that they go through. I mean, obviously, like any other standard gym person, some days are core, some days are upper legs, or I'm sorry, some days are legs, some days are upper body, whole regiment like that. More laissez-faire on what days are what. It's just, how the week goes. First week, I remember though, the warm up was always a mile on the treadmill. So walk in, we didn't have to walk in at the same time, but we just met at the treadmill. We'll do a mile on the treadmill. Now, ready? How long did this mile take? First question, how long did this mile take? That was the first wake-up call to what I was dealing with because this person finished their mile and I'm like 3/4 of a mile. So they're like, yeah, I'll meet you down at the weights whenever you finish. And I'm like, I gotta finish now. Let's up the speed because I have to finish. Being a hater helped push me. It helped push me to be better. I recognize that this person is very ripped and this person has built a physique from the gym. And I didn't want to get to all the way to that level, but it did motivate me to say, oh, okay, if this person could achieve that from being in the gym so much and really focusing on certain areas of the body with certain machines, I can learn and I could build that for myself. So it motivated me as being a hater, like, oh, got it. Let's keep pushing because eventually I want to be that person where I got haters myself on, how ripped I am, how buff I am. It's a very bad machismo thing that men do, but hey, it motivates people to get in the gym and potentially make better with their body weight and body shape. So why not? Finished my mile, went down. This person was already on the second machine. I'm like, yo, what's going on? And the person pointed to the first machine and was like, yeah, do your reps over there with that weight. And I'm like, okay. I'm already from the mile halfway winded. Now I'm doing the machine and I'm like, oh no, I'm not as strong as what I thought I'll be. I don't know if I can really keep up. So now I'm starting to doubt myself and hate myself of whether or not I can keep up. And now I'm starting to be a hater of myself on I'm going to slow this person down. I'm going to keep this person from achieving what they need to do if I don't myself improve. But I would say after a couple of days, I quickly got acclimated. I mean, what's nice is that I wasn't like not going to the gym at all prior to. I was going there sporadically. So it didn't take me that long to really adjust and make sure that I was at least at a pace where I wasn't making this person fall behind. Mind you, I wasn't doing the same weight as this person. We go to the bench and this person has like 2 plates on and I'm like, nah, we're gonna have to take a plate off for me because I'm not there yet. Sorry. And, this person will have 2 plates on, no spotter, knock out the reps. And I get 1 plate and a half. And I'm like, I need a spotter. And you see this all the time with people. But at least I was able to help speed up. And I did see myself get stronger and get better as time progressed. I really, really, really did. And it showed. I mean, I got a little bit of rip, didn't get buff, a little bit of ripped and gained a little bit of muscle mass. Wasn't anything significant, barely noticeable, but I felt it. I felt better. I felt stronger. I also felt myself being able to do the exercises a lot easier. You know, the first time you do the exercise or you use the machine and you're like, wow, like I could barely do the 5 reps. And then now you're doing the 3 sets of 12, no problem. And level up, you can move up in weight. And then you see yourself moving up in weight, which I did. And it's like, wow, this is great. Like I went from being a hater and almost hating on myself and preventing me from being able to achieve success to now I'm doing it. I'm being better and I'm building myself. And it all started because I was hating on I was hating on the person originally. I was like, dude, like, what do you mean you're always in the gym? Like, yeah, do you not know how buff and strong? I was like, how do you think I got so buff and strong in the gym? All right, I could do this. Let me try this out. Yeah. We learned very fast that we needed to get better, and we did. So I really do appreciate that person because they really did teach me a lot about my form, which if you don't know whether or not you're using good form, make sure you do talk to people because you can hurt yourself if you're not using the proper form. And it also made me stronger faster because I was doing the techniques properly, working out the proper muscles and being good. Mind you, this is what became the funny part. As I started to catch up, not in weight, but at least in pace and keeping up with him, that person started hating me. And that's when it became good. It's like, yo, I see you moving up in weights. What you doing over there? You know that's too heavy for you. I'm like, yes, it made me feel good because it's like, oh, I'm getting some good criticism over here of noticing that I can pick up a little bit stronger weights. And that becomes a really, really good feeling. And, you know, it came to the point where the person started making jokes or I'm on a machine and I'm like right in the middle of a rep. I put the machine back or the bar back, and this person will like go 50 pounds more. It's like, nah, you got this. Why are you using that baby weight? Go ahead and put on that big boy weight. You could do this. And I'm like, oh man, you tripping. I don't know if I could do this. And then I pull the bar and I'm doing it. And like that hatred, that haters will motivate you and have you doing it. And again, I was building my success. I wasn't successful at the time. So the criticism of like, hey, you're babying the weight. You could do better. Let's do better. Guess what? He put the weight higher. I started doing that on higher weight, and look at that. Now I'm doing the exercise at higher weight. Great. Same exact thing comes into the office too. Same exact scenario where if you're working in a function or organization, it happened to me too, that I was working for a function that people said suck. Like every time you mention the function, they're like, oh, those people never help. I never get support for those people, yada, yada, yada. And that's what I was fighting. That was the hatred I was fighting, the criticism that we do not provide support when it's needed. When someone calls our name, no one in this group provides proper support. That was good motivation for me because it let me know the perspective that people had. And when I actually did the research to understand or if they were being a good hater or a bad hater, right? Because I wasn't successful, it gave me an opportunity to do the evaluation. They were being good haters. They were being very factual in the sense of my team wasn't always, or at least the function, I wouldn't say my team, the function was not always there to support when it was needed. Totally valid feedback. And doing the research to really understand the times in which people have given this feedback opened my eyes to what they were experiencing. Because a lot of times in corporate America, you'll get these knee-jerk reactions where people say, oh, today something happened, therefore it happens all the time, and that's what I'm going to tell leadership that you always do it this way. It's like it happened one time out of the 360 times I've done it this year. Relax, right? And you want to tell that, especially to like operations that sometimes, but they don't listen and they kind of control a narrative how they want it. Totally fine. But there are times where people are giving valid criticisms of your organization and what your organization does. And this was one of those times when they said we weren't giving the support. The times that I researched that they were pulling from were not single occurrences. It was multiple different events where someone from the function should have been there to support, and it probably would have went better. There would have been more progress to success had there been a representative from the organization. So that motivated me to my key success to say, hey, all right, they're not getting the support. I can't do everything, but at least for the area that I can control, let me make sure I'm very intentional about giving these people support and very intentional about helping so that at least this area doesn't feel that way. I can't do it for everyone, but I can do it for what I can control. And part two would be trying to make that contagious because at least I can address my little area, but that's not going to stop the haters for the whole function. So the best thing that I could do at the time and what I tried to do, address my little area that I can control and try to make that contagious across to my peers, make them feel the same way, make them realize the same thing I did, that the haters that we're receiving are good haters and criticizing us constructively, not negatively with jealousy or anything. We're not doing and performing as well as we need to. Let's make the adjustment. Another good story about haters, if you really want to test and like get a good example of a hater and whether or not that hater's good or bad, this is a very good example for that. Presentations and public speaking. If you ever have an opportunity to give a presentation, and most people with ambitions in their career, high ambitions in their career, will get opportunities to public speak because you need to be able, or at least give a presentation. I shouldn't say publicly speak. If you have high ambitions, you will get an opportunity to present because presentation skills are necessary in order to move up. If you give that presentation and you receive feedback afterwards, you're going to receive some haters. And some people may constructively criticize how you did, and some people will just kick you for no reason. Or maybe you do know the reason, whatever. But you can get good and bad haters from that. Public speaking is another bar of that. It's like the second level of, actually, I would say public speaking is probably like the third or fourth level from giving presentations. But public speaking, again, once you get done with the event in which you publicly spoke, the event's over. You're successful. Now the feedback that you're getting post that speech will give you good or bad haters, but you were successful because you already went through it. And you can really evaluate how that event went and get some really good retrospect into how successful you thought it was versus how it really was. If you did a presentation to convince leadership or convince a company, let's do sales. Sales is a very popular one, right? So you do a presentation because you're trying to convince companies to buy something. You leave and you receive feedback. Were you successful? Well, you finished, right? You finished. There's nothing more you can speak. You're done. So you've been successful in your sales pitch of completing it. Now you're getting some haters, and the good haters that are criticizing you are saying you didn't even show the product that you were pitching. You gave all the details about it, but there was no demonstration. So how do you expect companies to buy a product that they haven't physically seen? The demo was nice, virtually, but if someone's going to buy something, they really need to touch it. Peace. Solid feedback. Obviously, you already did the sales pitch, so it's kind of a like mute point in terms of being able to reconcile what was already done, and that's the difference between success or it's like if it's done, it's done. Going back to the NBA, for example, this is the difference between LeBron James and Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's done. He's retired. He's never going back to the NBA. If you wanted to be a hater to Michael and say that he doesn't deserve the number one spot of greatest of all time because it's deserving of LeBron James, there's nothing Michael can do about that. LeBron is still in the NBA, though. LeBron could still get accolades and still do. I mean, Garner, it might be a stretch for him to win a championship this year, but he's still an active player. It is possible. It's not impossible. It's still possible. He's still in the NBA, so he could win, let's say, a championship this year. Does that now change your opinion on the assessment? Well, you have new information, new facts that you have to add to the original hating. So going back to the sales pitch is over. Can't go back. Success criteria met. Gave the sales pitch. Done. You were successful in giving a sales pitch. Now, whether that success pitch, the sales pitch, now I'm mixing up words. So whether that sales pitch leads to a successful sale of the product is a new step. And just because no company buys the product, does that mean you're a failure? It depends. If we're talking specifically in that presentation and public speaking skills, right? That was what we started with. That was one layer, one portion in this journey. You were successful at giving the pitch, which is a skill set that is needed. Public speaking is like a skill set that's dying, that a lot of corporate executives just lack, and it's almost feeling like it's getting worse. So let's make sure we distinguish between the two. So that's one area. And then, did your sales pitch actually lead to an offer to buy the product? Totally different. So speaking solely on the sales pitch, it was successful. You did it. You get good haters, you get bad haters. A good hater said that, hey, you didn't present an actual physical product, so it's kind of hard to buy a product that you didn't show. Bad hater says, I didn't like your tie. Like, oh, come on. Like, of all the things, why were there stripes on your tie? That helps absolutely nothing. The first time I did a presentation, super nervous about it, and that was my feedback, that when I spoke very fast, which I probably do in this podcast too, but I spoke very fast and my hand was a little shaky. So people recognized that I was a little nervous, and that's probably why I didn't get a lot of questions afterwards, because they didn't want to put me in a position of being even more uncomfortable. That's a good hater. My first public speaking presentation, that was the feedback I got. That was a good hater, because they were criticizing me and giving me good feedback on something I need to improve upon. Now, I haven't really had an opportunity to publicly speak in a forum more than, that's the largest I've done. Probably like 50 people is the largest I've done, is the forum. So I haven't had an opportunity to speak in an audience larger than that. When it finally comes to opportunity for me to do that, I'm probably going to have new haters to be able to tell me, hey, you did good, or you did bad. You may need to make the adjustments in here because this is how it came across. Or, hey, you spoke too fast, et cetera, et cetera. Technically, you can be my first hater for this podcast. Like I said, when we first started at the table, you can let me know, hey, you talk way too fast and I cannot follow you, or you talk too slow, or I really liked how you give the food analogies. Can you make sure in future episodes that you spend a little bit more time on that? Something constructive. Or you can comment and say, your voice is annoying. Well, thanks for listening. That's my response to that. Right? It's whatever. Right? It's fine. But at least it allows me an opportunity to give an assessment on how I'm doing. And I'm doing the same thing. I listen to other podcasts as well. And I am a hater to some of those podcasts too. There was one that I had to stop watching. I caught myself being a strong hater because I felt as though the show tried to relate to people that the host wasn't an actual member of. It's a more family oriented podcast, and they will talk about like, oh, the struggle and having to go through hardship, and I definitely understand, so here's some cheat codes. Meanwhile, the person has a paid like au pair, multiple houses in different states. Like, we don't live the same life. I don't know how you made a podcast about being able to have these cheats and navigate the level I'm at when you're seven levels higher than me. Like, now I'm hating on you. And that brings us into our last section. Grow up and move on. Grow up and move on. And this is both from being a hater and receiving haters. If you are being a hater, that podcast I was just mentioning, I got to the point very quickly where I felt as though there wasn't a good relation between what the show was delivering and the audience it was intended for and where the host was at. A lot of examples the host gave didn't seem to relate, didn't seem like we were in the same stratosphere. So I grew up and moved on. I found someone else. And you have to do the same too. You got to just move on. And when we talk about in corporate, where this happens a lot, and I had to catch myself doing this, are people moving faster than me in their career. So I mentioned a friend of mine had this happen to them, and it happened to me. So I'll just go through my own personal experience. Came into corporate America. There were a large group of people that came in around the same time as me. So it wasn't like I was the only person hired at the time. A lot of people hired, let's just say same year. A lot of people hired the same year. There are people that I have mentored or met that were hired 2-3 years later and have now surpassed me on the labor scale. When I first got the notification that these people were in upper leadership, I was scratching my head like, how in the world does this person younger than me with, in my opinion, or I tried to be objective, but a lot of it is subjective because I didn't know what they were actually doing there. So it's just surface level facts that I knew, but not enough to really make a strong rationale. But how did this person with seemingly less qualifications than me surpass me in my career? Or at least in this career field? How are you in upper leadership and I'm still not? What I had to do in that situation is really evaluate my situation versus theirs. In my opinion, and this is what I have to tell my friend all the time and what makes it feel more comfortable for me. They're at a terrible company in my opinion. And that's where I really had to draw the line, where I had to make a choice in my career to change companies because I felt as though the company I was working for wasn't the best for my development. I didn't feel like the leadership was strong and supportive as a place that I would want to grow and become a senior leader. Other people are okay with it, and other people strive, and other people have strived and complained of how terrible that company is. Meanwhile, I moved on to a different company and I'm happy. I don't have complaints about the company that I'm at. I am really enjoying the time, the opportunity, and the leadership that I have. Did that stun my career growth? Yes. But at the same time, the lateral that I took in order to change companies put my life in a very better position. So yeah, I'm hating on that person who surpassed me but started their career after me. But I didn't, I grew up and I moved on because I took the time to realize that I wasn't going to be a hater forever because that's way, way, way unhealthy to be a hater long term in doing that comparative analysis. So I sat down, I did the assessment. I understood that the lateral I took was an opportunity for that person to continue moving up and surpass me. And while they go through the stressors and the trials and tribulations that the old company really puts people through, I'm in a much happier and a better place than that person will ever be. And some of those small wins you have to take and you have to appreciate and then move on. Move on. So what? So that person who's higher than me will probably always be making more money than me for a while until I eventually surpass that person. So what? I'm happy. I'm done what I needed to do in my career. Move on. when you're early in your career, you will notice very quickly, again, the pay and the position. There will be people that will be making a lot of money, and you'll just scratch your head like, how did this person make a lot of money? Well, it's not the 70s and 80s anymore, but there are still a lot of yacht club, I will call it very close knit networking and other factors that influence someone getting significant pay raises and same thing with positions. There's so many factors that influence how people move up in the company that if you took it black and white and you didn't take the assessment on the facts, you can go down this rabbit hole. And if you go down that rabbit hole and you decide not to move on, you're actually going to hinder yourself. The friend that I have that I talk to this about all the time does this comparative analysis between themselves and others. And it's like, how did I not get to that spot that person in? Where it's like, well, that person went through this path of A, B, C, but you went A, D, G, T. How do you expect to get to E like that person did if you're on T? You got to finish down your own path. And your path is not going to look like E. Your path is going to look like UVW. And that's okay. That's okay. It's like when people get all upset about, like, oh, why did that choose that person for manager or senior manager? Or like, I can't believe it. That person's so young. Stop worrying about what other people are doing and just worry about what you need to do. You can be a hater for a minute, and that's fine. That entry level hater is fine. But if you're still talking about that 5, 6 months later, what are you doing? Get back to work. Work on your career, work on your field. And that's what really helped me on my career is just taking the moment, taking that tactical pause to say, hey, this is the path you took. This is the path I took. This is why we're different. Congrats on your success. Or you don't have to say congrats, but and for me, I said congrats on your success in my mind and move on. I'm going to follow this path here because at the end of the day, they're not paying my bills. The company is. I have to put my career in my own hands and do whatever's the best for me. I'm going to get haters along the way as long as I'm successful, but I can't spend so much time being a hater. Last story alert. Last story, then we'll wrap this up. So I'll give you one last story about the first one about pay, right? Pay is typically the most obvious version or obvious situation of someone being a hater. When you see public data of CEOs, how much they get paid, and you're like, wow, right? So I think I get paid relatively well, but there was a point in time early in my career, which we had a peer, and I say we, not just me, Tiger. There were probably 2 or 3 other people that were aware of the situation in which we had a 4th peer, someone that we considered a peer, only a year and a half ahead of us in terms of career, make a transition and a jump from, I would say, like senior individual contributor to senior leadership. The jump that was made was just, it definitely skipped a level. And everyone knows when these situations happen where, when it happens on like executive levels, and I've seen this happen too, where someone jumped through like 2 levels in finance and they went from like senior manager to CFO. And it's like, yo, what? Obviously, I'm not close to that. So I wasn't close to that situation. But at the time, this person was more our peer and went from like senior individual contributor to senior leadership, senior management, non-executive senior management. So somehow or another, the finance numbers came out of like what this person's being paid for that level. And I'm just like, hey, yo, what? Like, what do you mean? And where pay gets like really disrespectful and why people become instant haters when it comes to pay is not even base salary. One thing that you do have to understand about compensation, base salary means nothing in most of corporate America because it gets taxed so heavily. So if you look at the CEOs and stuff, a lot of their base salaries are under 2 mil because if they go any higher, it just gets taxed to death. So they instead roll a lot of their compensation into long-term incentives. And even the CEOs that do make, 10, 20, 40 million in base salary, they make a lot more in bonus and additional long-term compensation than they do in their base salary. And that's fully intentional. So this person that we were hating on had a significant salary increase. I mean, the salary was like 1.5 what I was making at the time. It was between 1.5 and 2x of what I was making. And the bonus compensation was like 50% of what I was making. So between their salary and their bonus, they were definitely making 2x of where I was at the time. And again, the jump was like from senior individual contributor to senior mid-level management. And kind of we were all scratching our heads like, how? Like this makes no sense because then if I'm doing very subjective retrospective, in my mind, I'm like, I'm 2 years removed from that. I should be at that position in 2 years, not knowing that there was a low-level senior, uh, low-level executive / super senior management that went over, took this person with them, and as that person moved up, he brought this person up. So a situation that happens all the time where people move jobs or move companies because they're following a boss, and that boss provides them an opportunity to move up pretty quickly because the boss moved up pretty quickly. That's what pretty much happened for this person. And it was kind of a head scratcher for us because we didn't have all that information at the time. So now we're just hating. And I'm like, man, this is BS. Like, I should probably be there in 2 years. And I don't even know how I get to that level. Once we were able to look at it objectively, have their rationale in the background that I just told you about, now it's like, okay, makes sense. We got to obviously build the network and try to make that opportunity for ourselves. But hey, now we got to move on. It still hurts because it's like, wow, like, you watch before the pandemic, this was usually around the time when people would show up with new cars. So this person definitely got a new car and was showing off that car. And that's another layer of hater where it's like, yo, not only do you have this money, now you're flaunting it in my face. Oh, I'm hating hard right now. And, I just went from a good hater to a bad hater now. And it gets difficult to be in those situations. So just remember, if you're ever in position of being a hater, just be careful. It's something that is good occasionally when you're providing that constructive criticism. Other than that, it's probably just toxic. I mean, it can be really toxic, like,
Hey, you said last story. Can you wrap this up?
Oof. Okay. I enjoyed working on this menu item with you this week, but let's come to an end while it's still hot. Remember, the ending to one story is the beginning of another. There will be more in store next week at the Corporate Kitchen. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Tiger. Until next time.